The moving truck pulled away from the curb as the tall, lean teenager stood looking at his new home. It was smaller than their old place on the military base, but his mom had said this neighborhood had good schools. He sighed, picking up the last box from the lawn. "Anda, come help me with the kitchen stuff," his mother called from inside. The boy walked into the house, setting down his box in the nearly empty living room. At 16, Andrew had gotten used to moving every few years because of his dad's military career. But this move felt different. His father was now deployed overseas, and it was just him and his mom trying to fit into this mostly white suburb. "You nervous about tomorrow?" his mother asked, unwrapping plates from newspaper. Andrew shrugged. "Just another first day. I'll be fine." His mother gave him that look, the one that said she knew he was putting on a brave face. "I know you will. Just remember what your father always says. Stay focused, stay humble," Andrew finished with a half smile. "I know, Mom." What his mother didn't mention was the other thing his father had taught him, how to defend himself. Since he was 8 years old, Andrew had trained almost daily in mixed martial arts. His father, once a combat instructor in the army, had started teaching him after an incident at another new school years ago. Andrew had gone from a skinny, unsure kid to a disciplined fighter who had quietly won junior championships in 3 different states. That night, Andrew unpacked his trophies but placed them inside his closet rather than displaying them. His father had always taught him that true strength wasn't about showing off. Morning came too quickly. Andrew chose plain jeans and a simple black t-shirt, trying not to stand out on his first day. The walk to Westfield High took 15 minutes, each step making his stomach tighten a little more. The school was bigger than he expected, with wide hallways filled with students who all seemed to know each other. Andrew felt the stares as he walked to the office to get his schedule. He was used to being the new kid, but being the only black student in his grade added another layer of visibility he didn't want. "You must be our new student," the secretary said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Here's your schedule. First period starts in 10 minutes. Andrew thanked her and studied the paper. History first, then math, English, and gym after lunch. He found his locker, quickly worked the combination, and stored his lunch. The morning classes went as expected. Teachers made him introduce himself, students stared, and Andrew gave short, polite answers before sitting in whatever empty seat was available, usually near the back. He kept his responses brief when called on, showing just enough knowledge to satisfy the teachers without drawing extra attention. By lunchtime, Andrew had counted exactly 0 genuine smiles directed his way. He sat alone at the far end of a cafeteria table, eating quickly and watching the social dynamics play out around him. That's when he first noticed them. A group of athletic-looking guys who kept glancing his way between bursts of laughter. The tallest one, wearing a Letterman jacket with FUT Bale patches, made eye contact with Andrew and whispered something to his friends. They all turned to look, not bothering to hide their stares or smirks. Andrew looked down at his food. He knew this game. He'd seen it before. Gym class came after lunch. The coach handed Andrew a uniform and pointed him toward the locker room. Inside, the chatter died down as he entered. He found an empty corner and changed quickly, aware of the whispers. "Hey, new kid," a voice called out. It was the tall guy from lunch. "Where'd you transfer from?" "Lincoln Heights," Andrew answered simply, tying his shoes. "Never heard of it. Must be one of those urban schools, right?" The guy's friends snickered. Andrew just nodded, not taking the bait. The coach's whistle saved him from further conversation. During basketball, Andrew held back, not showing his full speed or coordination. His father's voice echoed in his head. "Never show all your cards at once." He played just well enough to not draw attention for being bad, but not so well that anyone would remember his performance. Walking home that afternoon, Andrew felt the weight of being invisible and too visible at the same time. His phone buzzed with a text from his dad. "How was first day, champ?" Andrew typed back, "Fine," making it work. What he didn't write was that he'd already spotted trouble brewing. He'd seen that look in the tall guy's eyes, someone looking for an easy target. Little did they know, Andrew was anything but easy prey. Still, his father had taught him that the best fights were the ones you avoided. For now, Andrew would keep his head down. But he also made sure his workout gear was unpacked first that night, hitting the punching bag in the garage until his knuckles burned and his mind felt clear. 3 weeks into the school year, Andrew had settled into a routine. Wake up, train for an hour, go to school, keep his head down, come home, train some more, do homework, sleep. Repeat. He'd made exactly one friend, a quiet kid named Lee who sat next to him in chemistry and shared his lunch table most days. You always bring the best food, Lee said, eyeing Andrew's container of his mom's homemade rice and beans. Andrew pushed the container between them. My mom cooks like I'm still growing. Have some. It was a small moment of normalcy in what had become an increasingly tense school environment. The guy in the Letterman jacket, whose name Andrew had learned was Tyler, had gone from staring to something more deliberate. It started with whispers just loud enough for Andrew to hear when he walked by. Guess they're letting anyone in these days, or bet he's only here because of some special program. Andrew pretended not to hear, though each comment landed like a small stone, building a pile he carried silently. Today was worse than usual. In the hallway between classes, Andrew felt a hard shoulder slam into him from behind. His books scattered across the floor, papers sliding in all directions. "Oops, didn't see you there," Tyler said with a smirk, his friends laughing behind him. "Maybe you should watch where you're going." Andrew kneeled to gather his things, his jaw tight with the effort of staying calm. A foot came down on his history paper, grinding dirt into it. "Oh, sorry again," said one of Tyler's friends, a stocky redhead whose name Andrew didn't know. "Clumsy me." Andrew took a deep breath, counting slowly in his head the way his father had taught him. 1, 2, 3, 4. His hands wanted to move in ways that would wipe those smirks away in seconds. Instead, he picked up his dirty paper and stood. "No problem," he said flatly, looking directly into Tyler's eyes without blinking. Something in Andrew's steady gaze made Tyler's smile falter for just a moment. Then the bell rang, breaking the tension. "See you around, new boy," Tyler called as they walked away. In math class, Andrew couldn't focus. The equations blurred in front of him as his mind replayed what had happened. Back on the military base, kids knew better than to mess with the son of Staff Sergeant Wilson, the man who trained soldiers how to fight. Here, no one knew who his father was. No one knew who Andrew was either. That afternoon in English, the teacher assigned group projects. Andrew found himself paired with a girl who wore thick glasses and barely spoke above a whisper, and Tyler's red-headed friend. "Great," the redhead muttered. "Stuck with the charity case and the ghost girl." The girl flinched at his words. Andrew saw color rise to her pale cheeks. "We should exchange numbers to coordinate," Andrew suggested, ignoring the comment. "I'm not giving you my number," the redhead scoffed. "Fine, email works too." "Whatever. You two just do the work and put my name on it. That's how these things go." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Andrew thought about arguing but decided against it. "What's your name anyway?" "Ryan." "And that's Olivia." He didn't even look at the girl when he said her name. After class, Andrew caught up with Olivia in the hallway. "Hey, we can start working on the project tomorrow if you want." She nodded quickly, eyes darting around as if expecting trouble. "Library. After school. Works for me." As Andrew headed to his locker to grab his gym clothes, he heard Tyler's voice from around the corner. "That new kid thinks he's so smart, always answering questions in history. You see how he looks at people. Like he's better than everyone," Ryan added. Andrew slowed his steps, listening. "Someone needs to teach him how things work around here," Tyler continued. "Maybe after gym tomorrow." Andrew's stomach tightened. He'd avoided confrontation for 3 weeks, but they were clearly planning something. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "Always be aware of your surroundings. Know when a threat is coming." In gym the next day, Andrew felt eyes on him constantly. Tyler and his friends, now he counted 5 of them, kept watching him, whispering when the coach wasn't looking. During basketball, Ryan accidentally elbowed Andrew hard in the ribs while going for a rebound. "My bad," Ryan said with a grin that showed it was anything but an accident. Andrew rubbed his side, nodding silently. The coach blew his whistle, ending the game. "Hit the showers, everyone," the coach called out. As the boys headed toward the locker room, Andrew noticed Tyler and his friends arranging themselves in a formation he recognized all too well, surrounding him while making it look casual. They were cutting off his escape routes, herding him toward the back corner of the locker room where the coach rarely went. Andrew's heart beat faster, not from fear, but from knowing what might come next. He'd promised his father he would never start a fight. But he also remembered his father's other lesson: if trouble finds you anyway, be ready to finish it. The locker room emptied quickly as most boys rushed to their next classes. Andrew deliberately took his time, hoping Tyler and his friends would give up and leave. No such luck. He could feel them circling, waiting for the perfect moment when no adults were around. Steam from the showers hung in the air as Andrew carefully folded his gym uniform and placed it in his locker. The metal door closed with a soft click that seemed too loud in the now quiet room. "Well, look who's all alone," Tyler's voice echoed against the tiled walls. Andrew turned slowly, counting exits in his head. 5 boys formed a half circle, blocking the main pathway to the door. Tyler stood in the center, flanked by Ryan and 3 others whose names Andrew didn't know. "I don't want any trouble," Andrew said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline starting to flow through his body. Tyler laughed, the sound bouncing off the lockers. "That's not really up to you, is it?" He stepped forward, now just 3 feet away from Andrew. "You've been acting like you owned the place since day one." Andrew blinked in genuine confusion. "I've barely spoken to anyone." "Exactly," Ryan cut in. "Think you're too good for us? Won't even say hello in the hallways?" The absurdity of it almost made Andrew laugh. They were angry because he kept to himself, because he didn't bother them. "I'm just trying to get through the school year," Andrew said, shifting his weight slightly, preparing himself. His father's voice was clear in his head. "If you can't walk away, create space." "Well, we've got a little welcome tradition for new kids," Tyler said, cracking his knuckles for effect. "Especially ones who don't know their place." Andrew noticed one of the boys in the back pulled out his phone, camera already recording. So that was the plan: humiliate him and capture it for everyone to see. "I need to get to class," Andrew said, taking a step sideways, looking for an opening. Tyler moved to block him. "What's the rush? Missing math won't kill you." Andrew felt his back nearly touch the lockers. They were trying to corner him completely. Another step and he'd have nowhere to go. "Move," Andrew said, his voice dropping lower, a tone he'd never used at this school before. Something in that single word made Tyler pause for just a second, but then he grinned wider. "Make me." Time seemed to slow down as Tyler's hand shot out to shove Andrew's chest. This was it, the moment Andrew had been avoiding for weeks. Andrew sidestepped just enough that Tyler's push landed off-center. Not enough to avoid contact entirely, but enough that Andrew kept his balance as his back hit the lockers. "Wow, he's quick," one of the boys muttered. "Not quick enough," Tyler said, reaching out again, this time grabbing Andrew's shirt collar. That was a mistake. In one fluid motion, Andrew brought his hands up between Tyler's arms, breaking the grip with a technique his father had drilled into him hundreds of times. The surprised look on Tyler's face almost made Andrew feel sorry for him. Almost. "Don't touch me again," Andrew warned, his hands now up in a clear defensive posture. Tyler's face reddened. "You think you're tough." He lunged forward, throwing a wild punch aimed at Andrew's face. Andrew had seen it coming before Tyler even moved. Years of training took over. He slipped the punch, moving his head just enough that Tyler's fist whooshed past his ear. In the same motion, Andrew stepped to the side, now away from the lockers, creating the space he needed. What that Ryan started to say, but cut off as Tyler, off balance from his missed punch, stumbled forward. "Guys, little help here?" Tyler demanded, turning back toward Andrew. Ryan and another boy moved forward. 3 against 1 now. The odds were getting worse, but Andrew felt strangely calm. This wasn't his first time facing multiple opponents. His father had made sure of that. "Last chance," Andrew said quietly. "Just let me leave." "Get him," Tyler shouted. Ryan rushed in first, aiming a tackle at Andrew's midsection. With timing born from countless practice sessions, Andrew sidestepped while using Ryan's own momentum against him, sending him crashing into a bench. The third boy hesitated, clearly not expecting actual resistance. Tyler, now furious, came at Andrew again. "You're dead." Andrew saw multiple options flash through his mind, Ways to end this quickly, moves that would leave Tyler unable to continue. His muscles tensed, ready to execute any of them. But his father's most important lesson stopped him from striking back with full force. Your skills are to protect, not to hurt. Control is everything. So instead of counterattacking, Andrew continued to defend, moving with precision that made his actions seem almost effortless. To the boy recording on his phone, it must have looked like Andrew was barely moving while the others couldn't seem to touch him. "What's going on in here?" A deep voice boomed from the doorway. Coach Phillips stood there, face darkening as he took in the scene. For a moment, everyone froze. The recording phone quickly disappeared into a pocket. "He attacked us, Coach," Tyler blurted, pointing at Andrew. "We were just defending ourselves." Andrew said nothing, knowing how this looked, the new kid in trouble again, just like at every other school. Coach Phillips' eyes narrowed as he looked from Tyler's red face to Andrew's calm stance. "Everyone to my office." "Now," the coach ordered, pointing toward the door. Andrew followed silently, keeping a careful distance from the others. Tyler limped slightly, exaggerating an injury that didn't exist. Ryan rubbed his shoulder where he hit the bench. The boy with the phone kept his head down, the device now hidden away. In the small office next to the gym, Coach Phillips crossed his arms. "Talk." Tyler jumped in first. "We were just changing after class, and he went crazy on us." "Ask anyone." "Yeah," Ryan added quickly. "He's been giving us dirty looks for weeks, and today he just snapped." Andrew took a slow breath. He'd been here before at other schools. His word against theirs, and they had numbers on their side. "Andrew?" Coach Phillips turned to him. "Your version." "They cornered me in the locker room," Andrew said simply. "Tyler tried to push me against the lockers. I defended myself. I didn't throw a single punch." "Liar," Tyler shouted. "He's trained in some kind of fighting. He attacked us." Coach Phillips held up a hand, silencing Tyler. "Interesting that you know he's trained, if this came out of nowhere." He turned to the quiet boy in the back. "Pete, give me your phone." The boy, Pete, went pale. "Why?" "Because I saw you put it away when I walked in, and I bet there's video on it." Coach extended his hand. "Now." Pete looked at Tyler, who subtly shook his head. "I can get the principal, and we can discuss your reluctance with him," Coach added. Slowly, Pete pulled out his phone and handed it over. Coach Phillips tapped the screen a few times, then his eyebrows rose. "Well, well," he said, turning the screen toward Tyler and Ryan. "This doesn't match your story at all." On the screen, the video clearly showed Tyler pushing Andrew first, then throwing a wild punch that Andrew dodged. It showed Ryan charging at Andrew, who simply stepped aside, using minimal force. "We were just joking around," Tyler stammered. He took it too seriously. Coach Phillips paused the video. "So you were joking when you said, 'You're dead.'" He sighed heavily. "I've been watching you boys for weeks. I've seen the accidental bumps in gym class, the whispers, the looks." Andrew stayed silent, surprised by the coach's observations. "All of you, except Andrew, have detention for the rest of the week," Coach continued. "And if I hear about anything like this happening again, you'll be suspended from the team. Understood?" Tyler's face fell. "But Coach, we have a game on Friday." "Should have thought about that before." Coach turned to Andrew. "You should have reported the harassment earlier. Fighting isn't the answer, even in self-defense." "Yes, sir," Andrew replied, though he wasn't sure what else he could have done. "You'll have detention today as a reminder," Coach added. "One day only." After receiving detention slips, they filed out of the office. In the hallway, Tyler glared at Andrew. "This isn't over," he whispered. Andrew met his gaze steadily. "Yes, it is." Something in Andrew's eyes made Tyler look away first. The certainty, perhaps, the complete lack of fear. The rest of the day passed in a blur of whispers and stares. By last period, everyone somehow knew about what had happened in the locker room. Versions of the story grew wilder with each retelling. "I heard you knocked out 3 guys," Lee whispered during their shared class. "That's not what happened," Andrew sighed. "People are saying you're some kind of secret martial arts champion." Andrew shook his head. "I just know how to defend myself." After school, Andrew headed to detention, slipping into an empty desk at the back of the room. To his surprise, Olivia was already there, reading a book. "You got detention too?" Andrew asked quietly. She nodded, not looking up. I'm always here, not for punishment. My dad works late, so I stay until he can pick me up. Before Andrew could respond, Tyler and his friends trudged in, taking seats as far from Andrew as possible. The tension in the room was thick enough to touch. The supervising teacher, Mr. Hendricks, looked up from his newspaper. No talking. Do homework or sit quietly. Andrew pulled out his math textbook but couldn't focus. He could feel Tyler's eyes burning into him from across the room. What would tomorrow bring? Would things get worse? His phone vibrated in his pocket. Carefully, he checked it under his desk. A text from his father. Mom tells me you got detention. What happened? Andrew typed back. Long story. Some guys tried to jump me in the locker room. 3 dots appeared as his father typed. Then, did you hurt anyone? No, just defended, like you taught me. A longer pause. Then, proud of you, son. Control is everything. Andrew smiled slightly, tucking his phone away. For the first time since the confrontation, his shoulders relaxed. He'd handled it right. He hadn't lost control. Across the room, he noticed Pete showing something on his phone to the other boys. Their faces darkened as they watched what must have been the video of their failed attack. Tyler looked up, catching Andrew's eye. This time, there was something different in Tyler's glare, something like uncertainty. And Andrew realized everything had changed today. Not because he'd won a fight, but because he'd shown he couldn't be intimidated. The power balance had shifted, and everyone in the school would soon know it. By the next morning, everything had changed. Andrew walked into school to find people looking at him differently. Some stared openly, while others whispered as he passed. A few nodded with something like respect. There he is, a voice called from behind. Andrew turned to see Lee hurrying toward him, eyes wide with excitement. Dude, you're famous. Lee said, falling into step beside him. Everyone's seen the video. Andrew's stomach dropped. What video? From the locker room. Pete's phone got hacked or something. Now it's all over everyone's social media. Lee pulled out his phone and showed under the screen. There it was, the confrontation in the locker room, but the video had been trimmed to show only the part where Andrew smoothly dodged Tyler's punch and deflected Ryan's charge. Someone had even added slow-motion replays and dramatic music. Great, Andrew muttered, pushing the phone away. Fame was the last thing he wanted. They're calling you the ninja now, Lee continued, oblivious to Andrew's discomfort. I'm not a ninja. I just know how to defend myself. The morning classes were a blur of sideways glances and whispered comments. In history, a girl Andrew had never spoken to passed him a note that read, "That was cool what you did." In math, even the teacher seemed to look at him with newfound curiosity. By lunchtime, Andrew couldn't take it anymore. Instead of heading to the cafeteria, he slipped out to the courtyard, finding a quiet spot under a tree. He pulled out his lunch and a book, hoping for a few minutes of peace. Mind if I join you? Andrew looked up to see Olivia standing there, lunch bag in hand. He nodded, shifting to make room. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Olivia spoke. People are talking about you like you're some kind of superhero, she said quietly. But that's not what I saw in that video. Andrew glanced at her, surprised. What did you see? Someone who didn't want to fight. Someone who used just enough force to stay safe. She pushed her glasses up. My brother does judo. It looked like that, all about control. Andrew nodded slowly. My dad taught me that fighting should always be the last option, and when you have to do it, you use only what's necessary. Your dad sounds smart. Before Andrew could respond, a shadow fell across them. Principal Walker stood there, expression serious. Andrew, I need to see you in my office, he said. Andrew's heart sank as he packed up his lunch. New school, same problems. No matter what happened, the new kid always got blamed. In the principal's office, Andrew was surprised to find Tyler already seated, looking uncomfortable. Coach Phillips stood by the window, arms crossed. Have a seat, Principal Walker said, gesturing to the empty chair. I've seen the video from yesterday's incident. Andrew sat stiffly, waiting for the worst. Tyler has something he'd like to say, the principal continued, nodding toward the other boy. Tyler shifted in his seat, not meeting Andrew's eyes. I'm sorry about yesterday. We shouldn't have cornered you like that. Andrew blinked in surprise. This was not what he had expected. Coach Phillips and I had a long talk with Tyler and his parents last night, Principal Walker explained. The video made it clear who started the altercation. However, his gaze sharpened as he looked at Andra. You should have reported the harassment sooner, before it escalated. Yes, sir, Andra replied. Tyler will be serving additional detention and completing community service hours, the principal continued. And you'll both attend conflict resolution sessions with the school counselor. Andra nodded, still processing this turn of events. In his previous schools, he'd always been the one punished most severely, regardless of who started things. You may go, Andra, Principal Walker said. Tyler, stay. We're not finished discussing your behavior. As Andra left the office, he noticed several younger students watching him from across the hallway. One of them, a small boy who couldn't be more than 14, stepped forward hesitantly. Is it true you know how to fight? The boy asked, voice barely above a whisper. Andra sighed. I know how to defend myself. Could you? Could you teach me? The boy's eyes darted nervously down the hall where two larger students were watching. Just the basics. Looking at the boy's anxious face, Andrew remembered being that age, before his father taught him how to stand up for himself. How scared he'd felt every day. What's your name? Andrew asked. David. Meet me after school tomorrow, David, by the basketball courts. For the first time in weeks, Andrew felt like he might have found a purpose at this new school, one that had nothing to do with fighting and everything to do with helping others feel safe. The next few days brought changes Andrew couldn't have imagined. When he walked the hallways now, people moved aside respectfully rather than bumping into him. Classmates he'd never spoken to greeted him by name. Teachers watched him with a curious mix of caution and appreciation. After school, Andrew waited by the basketball courts as promised. David showed up 5 minutes late, nervously glancing around as if expecting to be ambushed. Sorry, David said, clutching his backpack straps. Had to make sure nobody followed me. Andrew nodded, understanding completely. Let's find a quieter spot. They walked to a grassy area behind the gym where they wouldn't be easily seen from the main building. Andrew set down his backpack and turned to face the younger boy. First thing my dad taught me wasn't how to punch or kick, Andrew explained. It was how to stand. David looked confused. Stand. Yeah, most people don't know how to stand properly. If your stance is wrong, you'll never be balanced enough to defend yourself. Andrew demonstrated, feet shoulder width apart, weight evenly distributed, knees slightly bent. Try it. For the next half hour, Andrew taught David the basics of a proper defensive stance and how to move while maintaining balance. Nothing flashy, nothing aggressive, just fundamental skills his father had drilled into him from day one. Most important rule, Andrew said as they finished, is knowing when not to fight. My dad always says that the best victory is the one where nobody gets hurt. David nodded seriously, practicing the sidestep Andrew had shown him. But what if they don't give you a choice? Then you do the minimum needed to stay safe. Andrew demonstrated a simple wrist escape. It's not about hurting them back. It's about protecting yourself long enough to get away or get help. They agreed to meet twice a week for more lessons. As David hurried off toward his waiting mother's car, Andrew felt a strange satisfaction. Teaching was harder than doing, but somehow more rewarding. Walking back to get his water bottle, Andrew nearly collided with someone coming around the corner of the gym. Whoa, sorry, he began, then stopped short when he saw it was Tyler. They stood facing each other awkwardly. Tyler had a basketball tucked under one arm and looked like he'd been practicing alone. That kid getting bullied? Tyler asked finally, nodding in the direction David had gone. Andrew considered lying but decided against it. Yeah, some older kids. Tyler bounced the basketball once, twice. You teaching him moves like you used on us. Just basics. How to stay balanced, how to get away safely. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Tyler bounced the ball again, looking down at it rather than at Andrew. That stuff you did in the locker room, Tyler said eventually. Where'd you learn it? My dad. He was military. Combat instructor. Tyler nodded slowly. Makes sense. You made it look easy. Andrew shrugged. It's not about being tough. It's about staying calm and using the other person's energy. Could you? Tyler trapped off, then seemed to gather his courage. Could you show me that move? The one where you slipped my punch. Andra blinked in surprise. Was this some kind of trick? But Tyler's face showed only awkward curiosity, not malice. Sure, Andra said cautiously. It's pretty simple once you know the timing. For the next 10 minutes, Andra demonstrated how to slip a straight punch, explaining the footwork and weight transfer. Tyler tried it a few times, his movements stiff and uncertain. You're leaning back too much, Andra said. You'll lose your balance that way. Try moving your head just enough to let the punch go past, not your whole body. Tyler adjusted, improving slightly with each attempt. Not bad, Andra admitted. Thanks. Tyler picked up his basketball again. My dad always said fighting is about being the strongest, hitting first and hardest. He bounced the ball thoughtfully. But that's not what you did at all. Different philosophies, I guess. Tyler looked at Andra directly for the first time. Those younger kids you're helping, you know Ryan's little brother is one of the ones giving them trouble, right? Andra hadn't known that. You telling me to stop helping them? No. Tyler spun the basketball on his finger. I'm telling you I could talk to Ryan. Maybe get him to rein his brother in. Andra studied Tyler's face, looking for signs of deception. Why would you do that? Tyler caught the ball and tucked it under his arm again. Because picking on scared kids is weak. I didn't see it before, but he shrugged awkwardly. Anyway, just a thought. As Tyler walked away toward the parking lot, Andra stood still, trying to process what had just happened. Was this the beginning of a strange kind of respect? Not friendship exactly, but something shifting in the right direction. His phone buzzed with a text from his mom asking when he'd be home. As Andra grabbed his backpack, he realized that for the first time since moving here, this place was starting to feel less like enemy territory and more like somewhere he might actually belong. 2 months had passed since the locker room incident. Winter had settled over the town, bringing cold winds and early darkness. Andra zipped up his jacket as he left the school building, heading toward the student parking lot where a small crowd had gathered. He'd heard the shouting before he saw what was happening. Pushing through the onlookers, Andra found David backed against a car, surrounded by 3 older boys. Ryan's younger brother, Michael, stood at the center, finger jabbing at David's chest. Thought you could tell the teachers on me, Michael was saying. You're dead meat now. Andra assessed the situation quickly. David was using the stance Andra had taught him, staying balanced despite his obvious fear. The crowd of students watching didn't seem inclined to help, just eager for drama. Everything okay here? Andra asked, stepping forward. Michael turned, sneering when he saw Andra. This isn't your business. David's my friend. That makes it my business. Andra kept his voice calm, hands relaxed at his sides. Let's all just head home. No need for trouble. Michael scoffed. Your bodyguard can't always be around, he told David. Remember that. Just as Michael turned to leave, someone else pushed through the crowd. Mike, what did I tell you? It was Ryan, face flushed from running across the parking lot. Tyler followed close behind him. Michael rolled his eyes. Come on, bro. We're just talking. Doesn't look like talking to me. Ryan grabbed his brother's arm. We had a deal. You promised to knock this off. The crowd murmured in surprise. No one had expected Ryan to intervene against his own brother. Since when do you care? Michael challenged. Ryan glanced at Tyler, then at Andra. Since I learned some things. Now go get in the car. Mom's waiting. As Ryan dragged his reluctant brother away, Tyler approached Andra. The tension between them had eased over the past weeks, especially after their awkward basketball court conversation. Told you I'd talk to him, Tyler said. His brother's a work in progress, though. Andra nodded. Thanks for stepping in. Wasn't just me. Tyler shrugged. Ryan's been thinking a lot since, you know. The crowd dispersed as the excitement ended, disappointed there hadn't been a fight. David released a shaky breath. I used that move you taught me earlier, David told Andra proudly. When Michael tried to grab my backpack, I broke his grip like you showed me. He was really surprised. Andra smiled. Good. Remember, it's not about fighting. It's about staying safe, David finished. I know. As David headed toward his bus, Tyler fell into step beside Andra. Coach says you've got some serious skill, Tyler mentioned. Says you should join the wrestling team next semester. Andra considered it. Maybe. My dad would probably like that, using the skills in a positive way. They walked in companionable silence for a moment, not quite friends, but no longer enemies. "My dad called yours, Tyler said suddenly. "After everything." They talked for like an hour. Andrew stopped walking. "Seriously? About what?" "Don't know exactly. But my dad's been different since. Signed me up for actual boxing lessons with a real coach instead of just telling me to man up and fight in the street." Tyler kicked at a pebble. "He said your dad taught him something about respect." Andrew nodded, thinking of his father's wisdom that had shaped his entire approach to conflict. That sounds like something he would say. Near the edge of the parking lot, Olivia waved at Andrew from beside Lee, who was showing her something on his phone. They had all started having lunch together recently, an unlikely group brought together by circumstance. "Your dad coming home for Christmas?" Tyler asked. "Yeah, his deployment ends next week." "Cool." Tyler hesitated. "Maybe you guys could come over sometime. My dad's got a home gym in the garage. Said your dad might want to check it out." Andrew couldn't help but smile at the strange turn his life had taken. 2 months ago, these people had been strangers or enemies. Now he had friends, respect, and even the former bullies were trying to make amends. As he joined Olivia and Lee, Andrew glanced back at the school building. His father had always told him that true strength wasn't about winning fights, it was about changing situations so fighting became unnecessary. For the first time, Andrew truly understood what that meant. He had come to this school prepared to defend himself against enemies. Instead, he had found a way to create allies. Not through force, but through example. Not through fear, but through respect. And that, his father would say, was the greatest victory of all.